What's going on, guys? This is Joe, and I am back for the third and final part in the Vorthos booster box opening for Dominaria, as you probably already could tell. So we have one more column to go. This is my video series. I basically just opened a booster box and decided to take the time because this is a lore-based set, a story-based set, and a story-based plane. And so I decided to take the time to go through some of these cards, open them up, and talk to all of you about my knowledge of the story implications of these cards. Unfortunately, I am sure that I am missing plenty, and you guys can feel free to let me know what your favorite lore is from some of these cards in the comments down below if you would like. But I'm just doing this to try to have something on our channel as some information for some people, because some people might not be aware of what a lot of these cards might mean. So I encourage you to check out parts 1 and 2. I might reiterate myself a bit, but hopefully with some of the legendary creatures, the uncommons, the rares, the mythics, there will be some new information for all of you, and I hope that you enjoy. So we start with an opt. Once again, we have older Teferi standing in front of a statue of younger Teferi, kind of the contrast of the two there, plus the way that he kind of attempted to redeem himself in these stories seemed really cool, and Opt is a nice reprint, so it all kind of works out well balance-wise. We have a Gitu Journey Mage, again the Gitu being the, they're called here human wizards, but they are mostly pyromancers, Joyra being, I would think, the most famous of the Gitu, in terms of at least our knowledge. We have an Excavation Elephant. This was shown during the Magic story when we had Teferi meeting up with the traveling band, including Quende, and where he met his future wife and mother of his daughter as well. We have a Homarid Explorer. Just being back on Dominaria, you have Homarid, the crab/lobster type people, and yeah, it was really nice to see them. Homarid are some people's favorite creatures. I enjoy them. I don't know that they're my favorite creature type, but they're really cool. So we are back with some Homarid. We have a Pierce the Sky. This is your generic destroy a flyer type of a thing. This referencing Llanowar elves, which makes sense. They hide in the woods and shoot arrows because they're elves. We have a rat colony. Once again, this is going to be talking about Urborg and the Cabal, but this is just a way to have some rat creature types, some lower drop black cards, but it also references that you can have any number of them, which is very similar to Relentless Rats, which I'm going to go ahead and say was first printed in a set that was set on Dominaria, and if I'm wrong, I apologize, but feel free to go look that up. We have a Fungal Infection, once again referencing Saproling tokens and Thallid, or fungus creatures. We have a Tragic Poet. This was originally printed in a Dominaria-based set. A Tragic Poet caring about enchantments, which means it was likely an Urza's set, Urza's Saga, Legacy, or the other one that I'm not going to remember right now, Destiny. That's the one I'm thinking of. One of those three is where Tragic Poet was originally printed, and so especially with sagas in this set, Tragic Poet does quite a bit of work. We have another fungus-based card in the Yavimaya Sapherd. Partic Wanderer. Once again, this is a golem, so another example of some of the older mechanical and or elemental-based beings on Dominaria, left over from years past. We have a Lingering Phantom, which we got to see. It's our first uncommon, and we got to see this when Teferi was joined by Liliana and Gideon and Joyra and etc. In his quest for one of Urza's old, buried, long-forgotten items. We have a Howling Golem. So this is basically a Howling Mine, one of the old cards from, again, one of the original early Dominarian sets. That was a Howling Mine that would allow every player at the beginning of their turn to draw an additional card, and this is a creature that whenever it attacks or blocks, each player draws a card. So it still has the same general effect of allowing people to draw cards, but now it's on a creature instead, which seems to be Magic's MO recently, is taking a lot of older abilities and that were good on instants, sorceries, enchantments, artifacts, etc., and now putting them on creatures, kind of leaning more heavily towards creature-based storytelling. And so this was kind of cool that the Howling Mine kind of was animated into a golem and now walks around giving the benefits of card draw whenever it attacks or blocks. We have our rare legendary artifact equipment in the Black Blade Reforged. I think this card is so sweet. It has a pretty high equip cost, but if you equip it to a legendary creature, it's a much less high equip cost, and it's an amazing card. And in the story, there are a ton of implications for this card. Obviously, Dakin Blackblade, the original wielder of this blade, back when we were around, I believe, from Legends, was it was used to kill an Elder Dragon, which in the M19 stories coming up, maybe we hear about it, maybe we don't, but it was discussed that, hey, it killed an Elder Dragon previously, and right about now there's some want to kill an Elder Dragon in Nicol Bolas, so maybe this, is able to come back into play. Now, we saw Gideon attempt to use it reluctantly and not be successful against Belzenlok, but Liliana ended up wielding it with success to assist her in killing Belzenlok. I assume because of the flavor text on this card and because of the fact that he ends up with it at the end of the story that it will now still be in Gideon's, or is now still in Gideon's possession. And we will see if Gideon is more willing to use it because he really doesn't want to, because it steals your soul. And not your soul, the wielder, but whoever gets stabbed and or killed by this thing, the blade drains your soul, which is super evil and not very Gideon of him. But when it comes to someone like Nicol Bolas, or in the case of these stories, someone like Belzenlok, Gideon was willing to make an exception. He just couldn't quite get there with Belzenlok, at least. So we'll see how he fares against Gideon. Behind it, we have our legendary creature, Ingrun the Lonely King. Was not mentioned in the stories, unfortunately, although is a sweet card. We have a swamp behind that, and a soldier token. On to pack 2 with Teferi on it. Pack 2 for this section, of course. We have opened, like I said, we've done this twice before. You can tell it says part 3 down below. So if you're curious of all the cool things that we open, check out the other videos. We have a Cold Water Snapper, once again referencing Cold Snap. I won't go all the way into that like I did last time. We have a Fervent Strike showing, again, a weapon inflamed that the Gitu can do and are wont to do, as we saw with the Gitu Journey Mage, I believe, earlier. We have a Sergeant at Arms, once again, a Banalish knight creature, or soldier creature in this case. We have a Befuddle. There's just Joyra is discussing this, and she is talking about Rada. And Rada's really cool. Hopefully maybe we'll see her later. She was in the story a touch, but Joyra, along with Teferi, were together how we were introduced to Rada in the Magic stories, and so they know her the best. And so in this case, Joyra is referencing Rada and referencing some of the things that she and the Keldans learned from Rada. We have a Caligo Skin Witch, once again a generic kind of enemy figure for the Cabal to have on their side. Arbor Armament, just an elf, once again with a bow and arrow. We have a Stronghold Confessor, this one another human cleric Cabal member. We have it Rescue, so we have people once again pilfering or rescuing tomes and knowledge from Dominaria's past, and in this case that includes Hercules additions on restoring physical objects from ash. So here is an example of that. We have Blessed Light, just light magic being used. Amazing art on this card. I mean, Vorthos isn't just story. Look at how sweet that art is. I love it, and I want it in foil real bad. Another Yavimaya Sap Herd, another a Spore Swarm is our first uncommon. More Thalids and Saprolings, etc. Thorn Elemental, once again, a sweet reprint from original Dominaria. It's an elemental, and it does some really cool things. So I love its ability. I think it's very interesting. So that there's no sense in blocking this creature, basically, unless you're killing it in the process, because otherwise it just does whatever it wants. We have our third uncommon in this pack is the Flame of Keld. And the cool thing about this, one, it's a saga. Amazing. But it talks about the Flame of Keld. We saw in the Time Spiral story, we saw Teferi kind of bringing Radha to her Keldan roots to see all the different kind of unfortunately destroyed or messed up remnants of Keld. And Keld, these are the flames of Keld. This is what powers the mountain and etc. So it's an opportunity to learn more about Keld. Once again, with the sagas, I always say there's so much to unpack here that I encourage you to go read more about it yourself, because it would be a whole video in and of itself for most of the sagas, all the sagas. So I encourage you to read up on it. But with Keld being such a strong warrior race, warlord race, and the fighters that they are, Radha being a big part of that these days, the Flames of Keld is a really interesting saga to have. We then get a mythic, which is awesome, in Multani Yavamaya's Avatar. So Multani was in this story, although originally was a little crazy, a little not themselves, and we got to see Chandra actually step up and kind of calm Multani down, despite the fact that it's Chandra, she's a pyromancer. She could have, if she wanted to, burned Multani to the ground, basically, or just lit him on fire and did it, eternal fire burning forever, whatever, with Jaya's help if necessary, since Jaya was there as well. And Karn was having somewhat of a conflict with Multani at the time, but Chandra was able to use her friendship with Nissa to calm Multani down from the crazed state that Multani was in, and calm them down to this state as we see them here. And that act, kind of in and of itself, was what convinced Jaya that Chandra might in fact be worthy of Jaya's teachings to help her get stronger in the coming fight against Nicobolus. So Multani played actually a kind of an interesting part in this story. Behind Multani, a mountain and a sapperling token. Speaking of Jaya Ballard, we have her next. Also discovered to be was Mother Luti this whole time. Chandra's, I guess, trainer at the Ragathan temple. The Carol Keep, I should say. Speaking of the Keldan warlords from before, we have the Warlord's Fury. We have a Knight of Nubenalia. I think that kind of speaks for itself. We have a Corrosive Ooze. We've seen many oozes in Magic's history. This is just another example. A Cabal Paladin. This is a paladin that works for the Cabal. Hooray. We have a Skittering Surveyor. Again, it's a construct. We've seen many constructs. It's basically just a big old telescope on legs, which is why it allows you to search for a basic, because it is exploring or surveying. We have an Academy Drake with the Talarian Academy or Talaria West down here underneath it, because it's a Drake from the Academy. We have a Seismic Shift. If you were not aware, the geography on Dominaria is, or was, historically kind of in flux. And sure, seismic shifts are just things that happen, right? They happen here on Earth as well. But Dominaria tended to be a little bit more volatile because you had people like Teferi, just big old planeswalkers kind of going around doing whatever they want, phasing continents in and out of existence, and so it tended to mess with things a little bit, and you would get things like these seismic shifts. We have a Voltaic Servant. Once again, we've talked about this guy in the past, but it is a construct that now flavorfully has an object like a Voltaic Key as its hand, which is why it has the ability of the Voltaic Key, similar to the way that the Howling Mine had the Howling, or the Howling Golem had the Howling Mine's ability. This is the Voltaic Servant having the Voltaic Key's ability, going along with creatures having old common abilities from other card types. We have an Eviscerate. It is a creature being eviscerated. Destroy target creature. Sweet removal spell. Another Partic Wanderer. We have a Triumph of Gerard. I cannot take credit for understanding this card. I will shout out to Vorthos J. You should go check him out and the articles that he writes, and follow him on Twitter as well, because since I followed him on Twitter, I was able to read his explanation of this card. This is, as with most of the sagas, it's almost like you're walking through a museum and you're seeing the depictions of all of these things that have occurred in Dominaria's past. And with this one in particular, you have Gerard himself holding this spear, obviously again in statue form, but it is showing the use of the legacy weapon, with the tip of the spear being the weatherlight, and the kind of light coming down and doing what the legacy weapon wants to do. Once again, I encourage you to look up more of this information for yourself, but that's just a little taste, and that it is our first uncommon. We have a Knight of Malice. These were akin to the similar knights from earlier printings that did very similar things. They were protection from white on the Black Knight and protection from black on the White Knight. Now we have hexproof from white and hexproof from black on this printing. And we have a Board the Weatherlight. Not a story spotlight card, despite what I thought when I first saw it, but it is depicting Gideon and Liliana finally meeting up with the Weatherlight, boarding it, joining the crew, at least for that leg of their journey, to defeat the Cabal, which is kind of what Joyra was trying to do in the first place in gathering people like Shauna, etc., to her side, who were already doing those kinds of things. So here we have Board the Weatherlight. Speaking of the Weatherlight, we have a member of the Weatherlight crew that did not make it into the stories, but that many people just, because they know that he was a member of the Weatherlight crew, we have Squee. Squee the Immortal, Squee the guy that cannot be killed, despite he's just always around. He's just always around, and yet he wasn't in the stories at all, which I was a little bit surprised by, but maybe they just couldn't find a place for him. But here is Squee. I think a lot of fans were super happy to see Squee, back in the set at least. Once again, I think this was an opportunity for Wizards to print a fan favorite, even if he wasn't gonna be in the stories. So here is Squee the Immortal. We have a Plains behind that, and a Sapperling token behind that. We have Karn on this pack. I would love to open a Planeswalker in this box. Sure, I'm talking about story, and so yeah, it would be nice to be able to talk about the story of the Planeswalkers, but also value is a thing that would be nice. I'd like to get my money back on this thing. We have Arcane Flight. I don't know that there's a story behind this. I mean, it mentions Tolarian Academy, and because otherwise, where else are you going to see weird experimentation like this where they give a cat wings so that it can jump and fly after this bird that it wants to eat? Whoops. I passed another Warlord's Fury. We saw that earlier. We have a Soul Salvage, once again, just nasty stuff that the Cabal is doing. And honestly, I mean, these, messing with people's souls, probably not the best. Uncool. We have a Mammoth Spider, once again, talking about, it's not a giant spider, it's bigger. We have a Run Amok. Again, this art was used when discussing Radha in the stories, although I think this is just a generic Keldon Warrior and not Radha, because Radha does look quite different from this on her actual card, Grand Warlord Radha, but we'll see. A Gideon's Reproach, Gideon punching a Cabal member in the face. Thallid Omnivore, once again, another fungus creature. We have a Jousting Lance. I mean, I don't think there's much storyline-wise to say about this. It's a Jousting Lance. There are knights. There's the Sapperling Migration, a Blink of an Eye, which is possibly the creepiest art in this entire set, likely the creepiest art in this entire set. I love it, but it's terrifying. We have a Chainer's Torment, once again, with the sagas. We got one of these in the last, in part 2, I believe, as well. I encourage you to look up. The sagas are sagas because they are important moments in Dominaria's history. That was literally the point of printing them this way. The vertical printing of the art and the text boxes was unprecedented and worked out really well, which I think sometimes we as Magic players might look at a change and just automatically be like, oh, I hate it. But when I stopped to look at this, and that's my personal opinion, of course, I love it. I think that this is really cool. I don't think that it should be something that they should look to do all the time, but I think for something so unique like this, I think it worked out really well. We have a Warcry Phoenix. This was the Phoenix that was featured in the stories attacking the Weatherlight when Joyra was out picking up people like Shauna and Raph, etc. So it left Tiana, Arvad, and some of the workers who were working to get the ship back up and running to fight this thing on their own, which they were able to do. And then after that is kind of when Joyra showed back up, and Tiana was like, I got this guy Arvad. He helped us stop a Phoenix. You should probably let him join us because he's cool. And that's how Arvad joined, because even though Joyra didn't know him, Tiana vouched for him. So there you go. And newly standard all-star, because there's not really much storyline-wise to talk about this guy, Goblin Chainwhirler. I mean, I'm happy to have it, because it probably jumped up quite a bit in value after the Pro Tour, but here's a Goblin Chainwhirler. Then we have something that we can talk about storyline-wise, Slimefoot the Stowaway. So, not a member of the Weatherlight crew, yet somehow a member of the Weatherlight crew, we have Slimefoot. Slimefoot was a character that the description of Slimefoot in the flavor text, as well as the little blurb that Wizards created about it, Slimefoot didn't need to be in the story, I didn't think. And then when it was introduced in the story, with its little sapperling babies, if you will, which aren't actually its babies, but that's a whole different discussion, it was done well, although the positioning of Slimefoot's story was odd in the order of things, and you can go watch our show for our opinions on that, but Slimefoot appeared, helped them out. In fact, Slimefoot was able to, with assistance from things that it saw over the bow of the Weatherlight, was able to help defeat Yargle when the entirety of the Weatherlight crew was unable to do so. So there you go. Slimefoot, as I said in our Jar series, Slimefoot confirmed better than Yargle. There you go. We have a Swamp and a Sapperling token. We have a Tashar pack next. Let's see what Tashar has for us. Inside, we have an Adamant Will. Once again, stained glass is strong as steel. We have a Gitu Lava Runner. Once again, another Gitu. Another Opt. Come on. Speaking of another Gitu, Gitu Journey Mage. We have a Gift of Growth. This is definitely not anything story-related, but is super flavorful. If you make an antelope or an elk or a deer or whatever this is, massive, it is able to walk out of a forest being taller than the forest itself. Dark Bargain. I love the flavor text in this card because it's this little dude hawking his wares here, and he mentions that it's real bits of Nevinyrral. I don't, you know, it's Nevinyrral's pulverized remains, genuine. I think there's been debate as to whether this guy's for real or not. I think he's a hack. I think he's lying. But hey, he looks cute. Some people just think that, of course, he has some bits of Nevinyrral once the disc went off and blew everything up. Who knows? I don't think so. We have a Keldon Overseer, so once again, the strength and the persuasiveness of the Keldon Overlords and the Warlords being able to compel anyone to join them, whether that's out of fear or actually out of charisma and being compelling. I think it's the first one. We have an Academy Journey Mage, so once again, a student of the Tolarian Academy, and again, wizards, right? It's for the wizard deck itself. We have another Tragic Poet, a Memorial to Folly. So once again, the last time we saw this, I took a guess, because I'm not sure offhand. I believe that this is supposed to be Urza. Urza is someone that a lot of older Magic fans or people who are aware of older Magic sets keep talking about, like, hey, give us an Urza Planeswalker. We want to hear more about Urza. And a lot of people who know the stories are like, Urza was kind of a jerk. Like, everybody knows that, right? He was kind of an idiot and a jerk. And so here's an example of a memorial to folly where you have an Urza statue that has been destroyed because Urza wasn't always super careful about the things that he did. Another Flame of Keld, we talked about this one already. It's cool to have a second one. Speaking of Urza, look at that. We have Urza's Ruinous Blast, where Urza took the Silex, which is this little thing over here. He's got his staff as well, which is on the things that are on either side of him here. But he took his Silex, and he destroyed Sarah's Realm in an effort to get rid of the Phyrexians. And it says that centuries ago, one man's vengeance plunged the world into ice and darkness because, you know, the Ice Age was a thing that happened. And so we have the legendary sorcery in Urza's Ruinous Blast. Ooh, we have a foil rare in the Thran Temporal Gateway. Not super valuable, but it is an example of some old Thran tech. Again, it personally reminds me of cards like Belby's Portal, and things like that from back in early Dominaria. And the foiling pattern is okay. I thought it would have been a little bit more striking. You can see it a lot better now. I assumed that the center of the portal would be kind of the focus, and it is. I think it looks okay. And it's our foil rare, which is nice. And we have Slyn Voda the Rising Deep, once again, not a storyline-based legendary creature Leviathan. We have a Forest and a Saproling token. Move on to our next pack. Let's see what we get here. We've already gotten a Mythic and a foil rare out of this column, at least. We have another Arcane Flight, a Gitu Chronicler, once again, more Gitu creatures, or people, Banalish Honor Guard, Dark Bargain again, with the bits of Nevinyrral. We have a Krozen Druid, so, I think this kind of speaks for itself in terms of what it is. We have Llanowar Elves, so elves from Llanowar. It's a classic card. It was cool to see them reprinted, and the joke was there are now elves in this one. Besides the 7th edition art, every other art for Llanowar Elves had only one elf, but it was always called Llanowar Elves, so now it has actual multiple elves in the art, so... Another Thallid Omnivore, Skittering Surveyor again, Academy Drake again, Seismic Shift again, a lot of duplicates here, Memorial to Genius, so you have this, a much happier example of things going on, and you have the Academy down here as well. Final Parting is our second of 4 Story Spotlight cards. And it is Liliana finally giving her brother Jozu the eternal rest that he deserved a long time ago. As we know, if you followed along with the Magic Origins stories, Liliana originally got her spark when her brother died, and she dabbled in some necromantic magic as a healer that she was originally. She dabbled in some necromantic magic, brought him back as a zombie, and her spark ignited, and she went away and was upset about it because she thought she was going to help him and was tricked. And this was her first time back. She finds out that Belzenlock has turned Jozu into a lich, and that she finally confronts Jozu and gets rid of him, but ends up using the power of the Chain Veil to do so, which gives her some trouble when she then ends up having to go fight Belzenlock, but it all ends up working out in the end. Thank you, Blackblade, as we saw earlier. We have the Mirari Conjecture. This is, once again, quite complicated as a saga, but basically the Mirari was an item that was created. It is super powerful, and it became a bit of a problem. So I encourage you to look that up. It is something that Karn was also involved with, so there you go, your Mirari Conjecture saga. And we have Rona, Disciple of Gix, another character that we didn't really see in the story, unfortunately. an island, and a demon token. I haven't seen this one yet. This is the one from Rite of Bells and Lock, I believe, when you do the final end of the saga. Maybe? Maybe not. And then, no, I think that is right. And then we have a Teferi pack next. That's cool. That's my first demon token from this set. I like that. It looks really cool. It's got the Seb McKinnon art that is kind of classic going along with all that stuff. I like that. I like that a lot. I ripped this pack to shreds and then just set it down. All right, so we have, to start, a Frenzied Rage, once again, looking like this is talking about Valduk, Keeper of the Flame, but it's just another example of some Keldon warriors. Another Benalish Honor Guard. Syncopate, which is Teferi using his magic to kind of cancel that spell behind him. It's very Teferi, though, for him to be doing it kind of so nonchalantly. He's not even looking at it. He's just got his hand up. He looks like he's just focused on anything else, but still is able to stop what looks like it's somewhat of a devastating attack. So, again, very Teferi of him. Another Gift of Growth, another Caligo Skin Witch, another Academy Journey Mage, Baloth Gorger, just a big old Baloth beast that we've seen many a time, or the likes of which we've seen many times. We have Guardians of Koilos, once again, some constructs that may be blocking some hidden areas, like people that, like Urza, had buried something powerful, and so they left some Guardians behind to guard it. That's kind of how Guardians work. Keldon Raider, once again, a generic Keldon warrior. We have a Champion of the Flame, so this is it talks about the Flame of Keld, but you have a Keldon warrior lighting up their weapons. So I mentioned that the Gitu do it earlier as well. It's kind of both, and that happened in the Time Spiral stories where you had Radha and Radha meeting up with two Gitu warriors that were traveling with Joyra and Teferi as well, and they kind of had that moment of, you know, hey, could you teach me how to do that? You know, maybe we could kind of trade, you know, secrets and magic discussion and stuff. So it's definitely something that many different races or of creature can do. And here's an example of it with Champion of the Flame, our first uncommon. Juggernaut, classic Magic card reprint. Again, not super storyline heavy, but definitely nostalgia heavy, and just Dominaria in general is the place where this card was originated. And a Sulphur Falls. Again, not heavy story here, but it's a dual land, which is always nice to have in different sets, and it's at rare, which makes sense. Our legendary creature, nope, I lied. First, we have a foil. It is a foil common in Eviscerate. It is kind of hard to see, but kind of not at the same time. I'm trying to get less glare and more foil. There we go. The background looks cool. I think the art itself was kind of so striking. I don't think I needed to see it in foil, and I don't think the foil does a ton to make it better, but give me your opinion. Maybe you disagree. But here is the Eviscerate in foil, and then we get Adeliz the Cinderwind, once again, another card that seems cool, but we did not get to see her in these stories. A Mountain and a Knight token. We have Teferi next. And Teferi has for us a dub. I dub you a knight. And the cool thing that I like to do with this card, this isn't, I mean, I guess this is somewhat Vorthos, but no matter what you put this on, right, for example, just because I have it sitting here, if you put it on the Goblin Chain Whirler, right, you've dubbed the Goblin Chain Whirler, now you get to say to your opponent, that's Sir Goblin Chain Whirler to you, because, you know, that's what they call knights. I'm lame, and I get it, and I'm okay with it. We have a Tolarian Scholar, just a generic Tolarian Scholar. We have another Frenzied Rage. We have a Blessing of Bells and Lock, kind of speaks for itself as to what that means. A Llanowar Envoy, once again, another example of a different kind of elf that you would find in Llanowar. Unwind with Joyra, kind of using some of her magic, countering a spell, but kind of putting it in what looks like almost a an hourglass, discussing her kind of relationship with time, because she sure has a complicated one. A Deathbloom Thallid, just another example of a fungus creature. Shivan Fire, it's a burn spell. Shivans like fire, or don't like fire, depending on whether you're on the receiving end of it or not. A Sparring Construct, just another generic construct. Gideon's Reproach again. Whoops. We have an Urza's Tome. Again, I think this kind of speaks for itself. You have a lot of leftover artifacts from pretty powerful people on Dominaria, including things like this, Urza's Tome. We have a Goblin Barrage. There are goblins on Dominaria, as we saw with the Chain Whirler and Squee and things like that. And they do what goblins like to do. They're dumb, but in numbers, they are dangerous, as we've seen in flavor in many goblin decks. They can come at you quick and fast and hard and kill you before you know it, even though most of the time they're being dumb. And we have, as our rare, a Daring Archaeologist, another example of someone who will kind of pull out all the stops to get at a lot of these artifacts or hidden gems, not literal gems, although maybe, hidden around Dominaria, because that's a thing that people want to do. It's a human artificer, and they will get what they need by any means necessary. We have another example, because this is the literal example, of Valduk, Keeper of the Flame. Again, this is a legendary creature who we did not see in the stories, unfortunately. We have a Mountain and a Saproling token, and we move on to a Jaya Ballard pack next. In this Jaya Ballard pack, we're getting down to it, the final four. The final four. Let's see what we have. We have a Gitu Lava Runner, a Serra Disciple. Once again, while Serra's realm is no more, there are followers of Serra still around, and this is an example of a Bird Cleric. Another Tolarian Scholar, Crozan Druid again, whoops, a Drudge Skeleton, again, see, it's a Drudge Sentinel, supposed to make you think of Drudge Skeleton, which regenerates, which would cause it to tap, which is why you have to tap this one when it gets indestructible, because indestructible is what is replacing regeneration. It's just a callback. We have a Keldon Overseer again. We have a Short Sword. This is the first Short Sword we've opened in this set, in this third of the box. It's the first one we've opened in a while, I feel like. We have a Vicious Offering, once again, offering to, whether it's Bells and Locks specifically, because of course it is, but it's by the Cabal. You have people who are worshipping these demons, Bells and Lock himself being somewhat cocky of saying that he has done anything and everything that has ever been done on Dominaria. And so you have people that believe that he is the end-all be-all, and I'm sure he could do many great things, so it is what leads people to want to do things like this. Another Tragic Poet. Here is the opposite of the Knight of Malice, I believe it was, that we saw earlier. Here is the Knight of Grace. Once again, like I said, callbacks to Black Knight and White Knight. We have another Final Parting. I've talked about this card already. And we have an Isolated Chapel. It is our second of the dual lands from this set. I'm happy to have opened them, not super heavy storyline basis, but read the flavor text, right? It tells its own little story, and that's where we're going with that one. We have a Foil Plains. Okay. There we go. The foiling pattern actually looks nice. I like that. It's a foil basic land. I feel like there's probably one in almost every booster box, because it's a card that could be in foil, and there's a lot of them, so yeah, there you go. Here's a foil basic. That's fine. And we get another Slimefoot. I was ready to talk about it. It's another Slimefoot. That's cool. We get 2 Slimefoots in a box. Some people would be super happy about that. I'm not happy about it. We have a Plains and a Knight token. Not the best Knight token art, but whatever. It's a Knight token art, and that's fine. We got a Knight token. We have 3 packs remaining. We start with another Arcane Flight, another Warlord's Fury, a Grow from the Ashes. Once again, this is the card whose name I'm not... Oh, no, it's the Phyrexian Colossus. Go look at the art for Phyrexian Colossus. That's what this is. And you get to see nature kind of overtaking it now that the Phyrexians have been gotten rid of from Dominaria. Another Blessing of Bells and Lock, another Unwind, another Voltaic Servant, another Run Amok, lots of duplicates, a third Gideon's Reproach, another Thalid Omnivore, another Jousting Lance, A Wizard's Lightning, once again, this is from the Tolarian Academy. It is if you have a wizard on the field, it's a lightning bolt. Very similar to, there's another card where if you have a wizard on the field, it's a counterspell, but they don't like printing just straight lightning bolt and counterspell in standard anymore, so you have to have a wizard to get those great cards. Another Goblin Barrage, and a Weight of Memory. So this is the final, meaning thank God it's finally happened, rejoining of Teferi, Karn, and Joyra for the first time. They kind of discuss even the fact that Venser is gone. They haven't been together since that moment, at least, and they kind of end up passing that information to one another and have just, again, it's a weight of memory. It's a moment of, hey, I've been gone a long time, or we've been gone a long time. It's great to see all of you. And it's probably a little awkward. It was a little awkward in the story, but it was also something that they needed to do as friends and as companions. So it was really nice to see. I appreciated that. And our rare legendary creature is Ariel, Knight of Windgrace. Again, a creature that we unfortunately did not get to see in the stories, with a forest and a sapling token behind it. We have 2 packs remaining. In these packs we have, hey, again, like I said, this is a Vorthos booster box opening, but I will not scoff at value. We have a Gitu Lava Runner, if we open it, of course. Another Adamant Will, another Opt, another Gitu Journey Mage, lots of Gitus here. A Divest, I mean, this little guy, I think this art is amazing. I think it's so cool that this little sprite thing is just opening this guy's head and pulling stuff out. I mean, we've seen that a lot with like Thoughtseize and things like that. It's kind of the same idea, but this is a unique way of looking at it in the art for this kind of effect. Another Llanowar type elf in the Llanowar Scout. Another short sword. I was just talking about not seeing a lot of these. We have a Pegasus Courser. This is a callback to a lot of the different Pegasus creatures that we saw on Dominaria originally. And they were classics. I feel like everybody who played a white weenie deck had one of these as, like, not one of these in particular, but a Pegasus type creature as an early drop flyer. It would come down and really heavily affect the board. So we have another Blessed Light. We have a Broken Bond, our first story spotlight, and a common. I always find it interesting when the story spotlights are on non-rares and mythics, because it's nice to be able to kind of open them in a pack and be able to talk about them like this. But we have Nissa going back to her home plane of Zendikar and kind of trying to see the progress there. I mean, we do get to see her sigil here on the ground has split and a sprout is actually growing out of it. As we know from the stories, Zendikar is Nissa's friend. And because she can speak with the plane, she communicates through the ley lines and with the elementals and things from the land. And she returned home because she was a little tired of helping Liliana. They really got their butts kicked by Nicol Bolas, and she wanted to make sure that her home was safe and secure before worrying about the rest of the planes, since she felt like they were doing it for, in some cases, selfish reasons. I can't blame her, but I find it interesting that she is gone now. I'm curious to see if and when she comes back for this Ravnica battle, because if this is truly the end of the Gatewatch story, I do not believe that she will be gone for the entirety of the confrontation with Nicol Bolas and all of his forces when the Gatewatch is on Ravnica. Maybe Chandra, for example, goes and gets her friend back if they feel like they need her help. We shall see. We have, here it is, I talked about it, Wizard's Retort. So here is the wizard version of Counterspell. If you have a wizard, it costs 1 less, and you can get a Counterspell, blue. That's it. We have an Orcish Vandal. There are orcs, and they like to destroy things. There you go. And our other Memorial to War. Here is Corona, False God, who has been about 50 different creatures, Phage the Untouchable, etc. So, again, something else I encourage you to look up, because I enjoyed learning about those things and reading those stories of kind of someone turning into phage, turning into corona, draining all the mana, and causing a war, and etc. It's a very, very interesting story. So I encourage you to look up some of those names and see. Wow. And we get a mythic in Demon Lord Belzenlok, the man, demon, not really a man, of a million titles, the fourth and final of Liliana's demons that she kills in order to get out of her demonic contract, and yet then she doesn't, but that's a different story. But here we have Belzenlok, the leader of the Cabal, the Lord of the Cabal, if you will, and the demon who has been wreaking so much havoc on Dominaria, turned Josu Vess into a lich, one of his lich generals, and was killed by the Blackblade that we got earlier, wielded by Liliana after having battled against Gideon. It was great. I really like Belzenlok a lot. I thought he was a very interesting character, and I liked the fact that he kind of rewrote Dominarian history and said that he was the one that wielded the Black Blade to kill an Elder Dragon. He was the one that did all these different things that he most certainly did not do, but because no one was going to tell him he was wrong, because otherwise he'd have them killed, the Cabal, and eventually, if he got his way, probably everybody, would have believed him after a while. But here we go with Demon Lord Belzenlok. Such a sweet card. I like that a lot. We have an island behind that and a cleric token behind that. Another card that you get from the Rite of Belzenlok. Our final pack has Teferi on it. We have opened a lot of mythics, actually, from this box. I will point out that 3 of them were black, because we get 2 Phyrexian Scriptures and a Demon Lord Belzenlok. I'm not super optimistic about what might be in here, but again, if we get to talk about story stuff, I'm okay. We have a Sergeant-at-Arms, a Befuddle, a Bloodstone Goblin, more goblins, once again. We have another Grow from the Ashes, Blessing of Belzenlok again, Skittering Surveyor again, a Primordial Worm, there were a lot of worms in old Dominaria. Scaled Worm comes to mind. There are many, many others that I'm sure are all coming to your minds as well. Let us know in the comments, but otherwise just know that, this is a callback to some of those great, awesome, big, green vanilla worms from early Dominarian sets. Academy Drake again, Demonic Vigor, once again, similar to the Blessing of Belzenlok, it's the same general idea. A Power Stone Shard, I love the flavor of the fact that the more of these you have, the more powerful each individual one becomes, because they power each other, or they each have like a little spark of power in them, and the more you combine them, the more powerful they become. I love that. We have a Serra Angel, classic magic card. It is an angel of Serra from Serra's realm, which is, like I said, no longer around, but you do have her disciples and things like that. So here is one of the most iconic magic cards, I think, to have ever been printed. Obviously, there are others, but I think this is one of the most iconic. We have a Memorial to Glory. So once again, we've gotten a lot of these memorials. I like this a lot. And this one from Benalia, because again, you see you can just tell based on the architecture, the stained glass is a huge giveaway as well. We get our rare is a Gilded Lotus. This is a sweet card. I love the art on this card. Again, call back to a lot of the different Lotus type cards, Mana Rocks in general. And this one is a Gilded Lotus. It sure isn't Black Lotus, but it's a cool card nonetheless. And we get, as our final legendary, Shauna, Sisay's Legacy. This is the daughter of Sisay, Captain Sisay, if you will, from the original Weatherlight story. And we find out Sisay being their last name. So this is Shauna Sisay. Captain Sisay was, Captain Sisay. That was her last name. And we get to see Shauna do some pretty cool things. She had an interesting relationship, not romantic, but friend relationship with Wrath as a member of the Weatherlight crew, and I look forward to coming back to Dominaria to see them all again. And by them all, I mean the Weatherlight crew, because they were able to stick together. We have a mountain behind her and a sapperling token. So, as I said, being able to see the Weatherlight crew when we come back would be nice because it's a nice way to close it off. I will end with us looking at the big bad himself from this set because I think that he is really cool. So I'm going to show you all Demon Lord Belzenlok. Check him out. He's really cool. I'm going to leave you looking at him as I say goodbye to all of you. I want to thank you all for watching. If this was your first time watching part of the Vorthos booster box opening, I hope you enjoyed. If you watched all 3 parts, thanks so much for sticking around because these were long ones, but I think I had some fun. Let me know what you thought of them in the comments down below. Were they too long? Because I'm open to constructive criticism. You very well may have thought they were too long, and that's fair. But here is Demon Lord Belzenlok. I want to thank you guys, like I said. I hope you enjoyed. I have been Joe. This has been part 3 of the Vorthos booster box opening and the final part for Dominaria here on Geek for All. Stick around on the channel as we are going to open more product for value at this point. So let's see what cool things we might be able to open from Dominaria, maybe for some Battle Bond next week. You can subscribe by clicking on our logo or tapping on our logo when it pops up on your screen. And as we always say, in whichever video of ours you watch next, we will see you all next time. Thanks, everybody.